Welcome to another episode of the Delete This podcast. The US has become a third world country. We are declaring it now. The US is no longer a safe nation, if it really ever was, because ICE has become more and more militarized, and we're going to get into the death of Renee Good and various other things that ICE has been involved with. And then we're going to talk about Grok AI. I think that this somehow managed to slip the larger news, but Grok AI is turning underage people into sexually explicit content, and it's disgusting, as you can imagine. More when we come back. As I mentioned, on January 7th, 2026, this year, Renee Good was murdered by an ICE agent. It seemed as though Renee had parked her car somewhere in the middle of some kind of traffic stop. And then there was an interaction with her partner who was like outside of the vehicle. And then Renee Good was inside the vehicle. And the ICE agents were surrounding her vehicle, asking her to get out, to get out. And then, sadly and tragically, the ICE agent shot Renee Good in the face, and it seems or in the head, and it seemed as though they shot more than one time. So this ICE agent is likely going to be claiming self-defense because they will likely claim that Renee Good was trying to run them over with the car, but the ICE agent also shot at Renee Good various times without necessarily knowing without necessarily being in harm each of those times. And so it's really tragic, especially just considering how the Trump administration and our elected leaders are responding to this. Their approach has pretty much been to shut up, don't say anything, and do not have an issue with this. When we see somebody die in front of us in cold blood, as it seemed, um, it's very alarming and concerning for anybody who is going to become engaged with speaking with law enforcement or is specifically in Minneapolis/Minnesota area. Now, the other thing that is also really hard to wrap your head around with this officer and how they went about restraining Renee Good by shooting her is that the ICE agent, uh, if they claim self defense that they were directly in front of the vehicle, you can actually see from their footage that they were at one point, the car was fully turned away from them and trying to steer out of the direction of the officer. Now, I'm not saying that the officer could not have thought that his life was in some possible danger in that moment. If the officer is directly looking at Renee Good and interacting with her in this way, then it seems as though he could have thought that he was in danger. But I do want to note a handful of key details. One, the officer chose to stand directly in front of the vehicle. And later on, we're going to hear from one of the deputy sheriffs, who is going to talk about how that is not normal police protocol for them to stand in front of a vehicle because it could incite like additional violence. It could escalate the situation. And law enforcement should not be attempting to escalate a situation. Was Renee Good fleeing? Yes. But did Renee Good have to be shot in order for her to be stopped? No, because officers are trained to obviously shoot tires. They're trained to use a tranquilizer. They're trained to use various other weapons to avoid violence or to avoid a severe response. But that was not present in Renee Good's assassination or killing. And I think that is what is really shaking people to their cores, because that is not a normal response that we should be expecting from our police force. We should not be celebrating a militarization of an organization like ICE or any police task force. Need I remind everybody of the Second Amendment? Yes, the Second Amendment allows Americans the right to bear arms in case of a tyrannical government. Okay, Americans are allowed to own guns in case to form militias to fight against tyrannical governments. And so, what we are seeing right now is essence of a tyrannical government in which every single interaction with the civilian and with law enforcement is highly militarized. These are not normal responses. And just to exemplify this a little bit further about how these are not normal people that we're dealing with, there was this, I guess, maybe he's a Trump supporter, maybe he's an ICE supporter. I don't know exactly who he was, but he thought to himself to get a megaphone and just start chanting out a bunch of heinous things. I want you to understand the kind of people that we are dealing with here are not people who can really be understood in the context of like real human interaction. Like these people are, if you consider like demons or possessions or exorcisms, like these people are as close as we get to like their spirits just completely being rotten and disgusting. But I'm gonna let you guys be the judge of it. Let's go ahead and look at what this ICE supporter was chanting to protesters.
The storm is here. When we come, one, we go all. No one can stop what is coming. Get here, guys. We need you in Minnesota. These people are fucking terrorists.
These guys are quite literally lunatics, and I would not trust them with any law enforcement, any privileges to be able to, I guess, administer uh, a response to, or to be able to administer any kind of like law enforcement towards civilians. I don't know who the hell that guy is. If anybody knows who that man is, please leave me a comment because I really would love to start investigating these psychopaths. um like I kept seeing a bunch of stuff on X regarding like this situation. It's just the escalation again, the high militarization of our law enforcement. And the comments on these posts were crazy, you guys. There were people saying like, yes, we should have like tear gas. I love the smell of like orange bullets and things like that. And then you like click on their profile and it was like a free speech enthusiast, activist, like America first. Like it, these jokes could not write themselves. These guys care nothing about free speech. They care only about subjugation of the public. And they're trying to convince us that this is normal. That is what is the most unsettling thing about this, is that they are trying to say, no, do not pay attention to anything that is negative about this. This is normal. This is normal. We are going to act like this however we want to act. Even I think like the celebrities of that attended like the Golden Globe or some award show I saw were wearing like this little pin that said "Be Good," obviously in relation to Renee Good's killing. And they were like, oh, like that, why are celebrities like interjecting themselves in this? This is kind of like virtue signaling. And I'm like, okay, yes, it is definitely is virtue signaling, and they don't necessarily abide by the same rules of our society as like a regular individual who doesn't have millions of dollars at their disposal. But they also could very much care about the welfare of this country. They could very much see that that is a problem. I think that's an obvious thing. And they want even celebrities like, just shut up. Don't talk about this. Like, this is not your place. Yes, we don't like the culture of celebritydom, but yes, anybody is allowed to have an issue with what is going on in this country, and those issues should be verbalized. But if you do not necessarily consider this new Orwellian society that is basically being constructed in the United States, then take it from Donald Trump and take a look at what his response was to the murder of Renee Good.
Do you believe that deadly force was necessary after watching all the footage a few days have passed? What's your assessment there?
It was highly disrespectful of law enforcement. The woman and her friend were highly disrespectful of law enforcement. You saw that. They were harassing them, were following for days and for hours. And I think, frankly, they're professional agitators.
Professional agitators. I heard Catherine Levitt repeat that talking point. Also, most likely JD Vance is copying it word for word, directly from Trump's booty hole. But when I heard Catherine Levitt repeat that they're paid agitators, I was like, what does that like even mean? There is almost no incentive right now for these people to actually be part of these protests, for people to be out here ramming their own vehicles into ICE vehicles, putting themselves literally in the middle of like an ICE deportation or like a arrest. I have seen uh, so much natural grassroots movements regarding ICE and people just saying, "Hey, yeah, this is not normal." Regardless of regardless of where you fall on the illegal immigration topic, this is not a normal response for law enforcement. And nobody from either side, this is not a question of left or right. It's a question of power and it's a question of subjugation of a general public because they want us to be fearful and scared and not resist and just take it. And okay, the military is coming into Chicago, just take it. They're now pledging that the military is going to go into California. Just take it. Uh, but comment to me what you guys think on this. What am I just blowing a giant casket, or are we in for some serious trouble? And if you do not think that these people are acting alone or acting in spite, you would be pleased to see what Senator of South Carolina, Lindsey Graham, has been as I think I saw the Young Turks and I think Anna and I forget the other host's name off the top of my head, but they were like, "Oh, this guy was like seething at the mouth at the thought of capturing Maduro." Um, I had to watch it. I had to watch the whole thing because I was like, okay, I just need to see these people like literally act like psychopaths, allegedly, in my opinion. But I just need you guys to see his what Lindsey Graham said about capturing Maduro. And this is just to contextualize the way that these people think about other countries, about other people, about other civilians. Like they are just pawns in well, we are just pawns truly in their game. And again, I want you guys to always be thinking about this, especially when we're talking about Venezuela, when we're talking about this. It's usually not even the politicians that have the power. These guys are puppets for bigger organizations, private companies. Okay. So when President Trump and Lindsey Graham are searing at the mouth about big oil now taking over Venezuela, well, they're happy because big oil is likely going to cut them a check. And they're not going to be the ones that are suffering. It's going to be the Venezuelans. It's going to be the Americans. It's going to be us. And if they throw at us cheap oil, then we're just going to be like, okay, I guess we're just going to do whatever you guys want to. We don't care, I guess, that you guys are pretty much just subjugating an entire population of people to your rule. But yes, we do care, okay? We do care about that because we do not want the U.S. to be involved in any of those things. Okay, but like I said, let's take a look at Lindsey Graham and just see what he said about President Maduro's capture.
President Biden put a $25 million bounty on the guy's head. Why? Because he was a horrible criminal, murderer, poisoning our people. Every administration has been saying he's a threat to our country. He's a bad guy. This is the first guy that's actually done something about it. Here's the story for me. He could be in Turkey today, but he's in New York. So if you tell people in Cuba, you need to stop being a communist dictatorship threatening America, you should go somewhere else. You better take the offer. Maduro has nobody to blame but himself. He gave him a way out. He chose to defy Trump and the U.S. military, and his ass is in jail where he deserves to be, and every president has said the same thing, but he didn't.
Who is this queen? Well, actually, she's more of a tragedy. Lindsey Graham, I need to know who is selling you your conditioner because the hair is shining, my dear. But on the topic of President Maduro and his capture, this guy, like I said, is a complete deranged psychopath staring at the mouth at the fact of being able to control another country, um, pretty much just through the direction of, I guess, President Trump and pretty much Big Oil, who is trying to get the reserves that they deserve, that they stole from us. President Trump, how exactly did they steal from us oil that does not belong to the US and is not on US territory and is right in the middle of Venezuela? Yeah, they didn't steal anything from us. But that's the thing with these big oil companies and big pharma, all these giant mega corporations. They basically just go to other countries, monopolize the natural resource, and then sell it on behalf of the large country and then make the people of that nation just enslaved to draw up that natural resource. They make up the workforce. And then when things go wrong, as things have gone very wrong for big oil, because big oil tried to do it in Iran, big oil tried to do this in Venezuela. Big oil has tried to do it in a lot of the Arabic nations that are associated with having large oil reserves, and they have failed because the people there fight back for the oil that they rightfully deserve because it belongs to their country. And the unfortunate thing about this, like I said, is not even about socialism. It's not even about caring that the Iranian protesters are dying in the streets. It is the US and private businesses that are largely behind these wars, conflicts, chaos that is going on outside of our country because they benefit financially from chaos. They sell when they are able to fund a war, they sell when they are able to get behind both of the enemies that are fighting in the war. So, that is the reality of the world that we are living in. And I just want to tee up this video of JD Vance and have you take a look at what he is saying about ramping up more and more personnel to go into Minneapolis. Let's take a look.
We always want to get them out faster. A lot of the ICE agents that we have hired in the past 6 months, they're not even done with training. So all of the big investments that we've made in border security, what we've done is actually gotten 2.5 million illegal aliens out without any of the really big marquee things that we've been working on. That was just simple willpower and the President of the United States coming in and saying, this is done. I think we're going to see those deportation numbers ramp up as we get more and more people online, working for ICE, going door to door and making sure that if you're an illegal alien, you've got to get out of this country. And if you want to come back, apply through the proper channel.
Yeah, I think when talking about ICE, I feel like a lot of times what I see liberals focus on is really the emotional aspect because a lot of people, especially if you live in like sanctuary cities, there are large immigrant populations, and most people are familiar with at least like one or more or many more people in their life that have kind of a questionable immigration status. And nobody wants to imagine like those people exiting their lives and their families. And I ask myself because JD Vance purports himself to be a Christian, and that is like his main motivation in life is he says like, oh, like having kids is kind of like the thing to live for. And I want to understand genuinely from the Christian community whether breaking up families, even though you might disagree with their legal status, even though you might feel that, hey, this person is taking a cut from my pocket, breaking up families is very anti Christian and is very against what is largely believed in Christian communities. And so JD Vance, I question like what his definition of Christian is. And I know a lot of people are going to say like, oh, he just envisions like a white Anglo-Saxon, like American population. But JD Vance has mixed race children. His wife Usha Vance is Indian, so his kids are mixed race, and they are most certainly not going to look just white. And so I don't think that it is necessarily a question for JD Vance of families or even Christian values. I think JD Vance, in my research of him, has consistently been a chameleon in different environments that he's in. If he had to be Christian, he was going to be Christian. If he had to work in tech and VC, he was going to work in VC. If he had to care about law, he had to care about law. If he had to be the hillbilly, then he had to be the hillbilly, and so forth and so forth. But he has just been the person that he thinks that he needs to be. I mean, he was a never Trumper. He did not support Trump. He thought that he was a fraud, that he was a fluke, and he was kind of like the new Republican generation at the time when he released like Hillbilly Elegy. Like, oh, I'm this like modern Republican. I have a mixed race family. Like, I welcome some form of like immigration, but I'm also really like Christian. So he was trying to make himself out to be kind of like this perfect candidate for presidency. I mean, he pretty much was pulled up the ranks. If you haven't seen that episode on my channel, please go and watch it. But basically, he was just like pulled out from like the military. Okay, boop, just do a quick little like media journalism. I don't even know how you get into that in the military. I thought you sign up and like they put you like out in the barracks. But please tell me if you're part of the military, like what that like recruitment process is like. And then he writes his book, and suddenly like everybody loves to read in like the US in 2016. No. And then he runs for Senate, and after 2 years of serving on as the senator, he gets chosen to be the VP candidate. Yeah, it seems a little bit odd, and we're going to cover this later on in another episode. But they keep mentioning JD Vance as, or keep mentioning Trump as the vessel to do something, the vessel to do something. Yeah, they're pretty much banking probably on Donald Trump likely passing away and then JD Vance just becoming president, because JD Vance is being backed by huge conglomerates, okay, like Peter Thiel, like Sam Altman, like all those gross, disgusting people that work in tech. No offense, actually. But yeah, those people are backing somebody like JD Vance. And we, like I said, we are going to get into that further on in this week's videos. But I do want to flip it back to talk about what is going on in Minneapolis, because the response has been very mixed. In fact, it's like the Trump administration and everybody that works in that orbit wants us to believe, oh yeah, this is normal, that they're just like breaking into your car, reaching into it, grabbing your phone, assaulting you. There was like a disabled woman, they were like pulling her out of the car because she was like freaked the F out because it was like 50 guys around her car. Yeah, people are having an issue with it, and the Minneapolis Police Department seemed to also be having an issue with it. And I saw people making fun of I believe this is the sheriff, and they're like, okay, who is this person? But I'm like, yeah, this is the normal response to have. Let's go ahead and take a look at that.
Good afternoon. I'm Rochelle Bilal, the sheriff for the city and county of Philadelphia. And I say her name, Renee Good. Renee Good. Renee Good. Renee Good. Renee Good. Renee Good. This should not have happened, but we're here today. Let know that law enforcement professionals, real ones, not the fake made-up ICE, probably Trump's new army to attack citizens of the United States. Did you hear what I said? No law enforcement professional wears a mask. None. None. Those that come into our communities wearing a mask to commit crime, thank God for our district attorney, Larry Kraftner, who say he's going to lock them up. And I'm saying now, we are not going to whisk you away for them to hide your identity, because when you do it there, you're getting arrested there. No whisk away for them to hide you. None of that here. None of that here. Law enforcement professionals do not shoot at moving vehicles. I'm not saying fleeing, because she wasn't fleeing. She was getting out of the way. Law enforcement.
Yeah, another weird thing is, why can we not look up actually any of these ICE agents? They're wearing a mask. They have a little tag that has a badge number on it, but there's currently no way to actually publicly search those numbers. So even if you request, I mean, if you request for the information, I'm hoping that they would give you the information accurately, but they would not necessarily have to, and I think that that is alarming to anybody. Now, I haven't necessarily understood where these ICE agents are coming from because, like I said, for me, they have just all been acting in a very odd way, in a way that is even alarming to like police, because they're like, yeah, we would not act like that to like regular civilians. Like that is not necessarily our protocol. And I saw a video too that mentioned like a theory on how perhaps uh, the US keeps our veteran population weak or struggling with like different mental health issues, because most likely that would be the population that actually could assist, that has the military background to assist with forming militias, with organizing populations. And the US seemingly, by not administering like a lot of healthcare or not really providing a lot of assistance for like veteran population, seems as though that could be, a hole that it is intending to draw. As more and more time progresses, I personally think that the US is invested, or modern societies are invested in breaking up the family. Because if you could think about it, like back in the day, like family units were the ones that would like organize together and chase out like a weirdo in the community, or like if the government was trying to like impose something, like everybody would band together in the community. But nowadays, you've seen the degradation of the family unit, or the degradation of those kind of neighborhood societies, really, uh, in order to make us more and more isolated. And you can see this in a lot of modern, like I say, modern countries where the population is very subservient. Take, for example, Japan. I visited Japan and I absolutely loved it. I actually got this little sticker from Japan. But if you could think about that society, it's a modern society. Citizens are not, you can't necessarily picture them having an uprising because everybody is kind of isolated. Like it's a party of one for going out to eat at a restaurant, going out to shop. Even people are not necessarily getting married as often, having kids as often. And US society has merged into that with like the feminist movement. I'm not saying that it's necessarily only bad, but I'm saying that we accepted things when we also accepted things like the feminist movement. Like, okay, we'll just get paid half of what we normally got paid. And now everybody in the family like must become an employee and work for the rest of their lives so that we can survive. And like we're not gonna have kids as well. So like no one's gonna take care of us. So we're gonna work until we're like 75 years old. And then we're gonna just like, collapse like at our job. And that's kind of what they expect. But if, like I said, if you think about a previous societies, you can live off of one salary. You can have your family at home. In that case, like you can have your wife take care of the kids and make sure that they're like well educated, that they're good. Like also, who forgot about like the hippie movement? Okay, the US, the CIA intentionally crashed the hippie movement. You guys can read about it in this book called The CIA. It also talks about Charles Manson, like that murder group that were like hippies that killed, I think it was like Hollywood executives and their families. Yeah, that was pretty much allegedly done by the CIA. There was a guy, so the guy that wrote that book, he was a journalist that was looking into the story for like a Times magazine article covering like the anniversary of the murder. And upon like researching more and more, he's like, okay, it seems like people are kind of like, this is more of a performative case. Like, why am I only able to talk to the person that like wrote the book on like the Charles Manson murder? And like, that's what like every other Hollywood depiction has been based off of, is like that documentary over and over. And yeah, he continued to research it and found like, wait, actually the US was running like a large scale operation, which is pretty much to drug the population using LSD and experiment with that. And then Charles Manson was an operative that worked with the feds to administer those drugs outwardly to the population and effectively kill the hippie movement when the murders ended up happening. So it's very, very, very interesting of a book. I would recommend anybody to read it. Um, but we are basically living in a society that is just degraded and degraded. And like I mentioned at the top of the episode, we are now getting into third world country territory because the US, she is not right. But I'm going to have you guys take a look at this video. This is a former senator actually talking about what is currently going on in Minnesota.
You want to know something? I'll give you a quote. We're a third world country now. You want to know why? I'm an expert. I've been to them. I spent 17 months in Southeast Asia while the draft dodger was playing golf. Right? You know how I know we're a third world country? Because in third world countries, they have the military doing their police work in the cities when you walk around. I was in the Philippines the day Ferdinand Marcos declared martial law and went under dictatorship. We went from nobody to a guy with a machine gun on every corner. That's what happens in a dictatorship. In comes the military. That's what's happening here.
That indeed is what is happening. And I want you to understand that it is important to contextualize what is going on here in the US and what is going on in Israel because Israel very similarly is having a large scale militarization of their police force. They are committing a genocide in Palestine and they are attempting to go after other Arabic nations. And the US and Israel have had close ties during this entire time. So there is no denying that likely Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister, is in Donald Trump's ear, giving him the advice to run this country in that same way. Okay, so if you see that it is happening there, and that is like the US's best friend, and nobody in politics wants to denounce that friendship or that allyship that no like US citizen really wants, um then we should be worried that that can likely become our country as well. And we are doing it. We are doing it to Venezuela. We're going to do it to Cuba. We're going to do it to Iran, and that is what they want. They want us to do it to those countries. And again, it is not even the US attacking. I want to always specify that it is them deciding. It is big oil, it is big corporations, it is people who benefit off of that chaos and war that are saying, yes, pull the trigger, fight, attack that nation. We need it and we will cut you a deal. But if there is nothing else to just put a cherry on top of this cake of the absolute hypocrisy that these politicians are now enacting or now being very, very complicit in, because most likely there's a check for them, there's a prestige for them coming at some point. And I'm like, is power really that thirsty? But nothing screams a thirstier biatch than Marco Rubio. Let's go ahead and take a look what Marco Rubio said before he started working with Trump. And I guess he was part of that Never Trumper movement.
The president works for the people, not the people for the president. And if you listen to the way he describes himself and what he's going to do, he's going to single-handedly do this and do that without regard for whether it's legal or not. Look, I think people are going to have to make up their mind. I can tell you this, no matter what happens in this election, for years to come, there are many people on the right, in the media, and voters at large that are going to be having to explain and justify how they fell into this trap of supporting Donald Trump, because this is not going to end well one way or the other. He's going to be the nominee and he's going to lose. or he'll have thrown this party into its most chaotic and divisive period ever. And that's unfortunate, because the Republican Party is the home of the limited government free enterprise movement in America. And if it crumbles or it divides or it splits apart, it'll be very difficult to elect candidates that hold those views at any level of government until we can bring the party.
What's actually really hard to watch is that the reality that politicians have pretty much just been bred to be ass kissers. And so when they are in a position of power to actually affect change or to have a voice in something, they are only used to kissing up to get where they want to. And I say this as somebody who went to a East Coast liberal arts school where a lot of kids were involved in local politics, involved in governor races, senator races happening in Maine. Yeah, they're kiss ups, okay? Like that is the way to get into politics. You help with the fundraising, and then you help like you network with these people. You slowly kind of get in their circle. I mean, like when you think about like an incoming presidential elect, like the people that are working as part of that campaign to fundraise, to like provide ideas, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, those are the people that become part of the presidential cabinet. So they are very, very much used to just doing whatever the person in power says, if they think that is going to get them into power. And Mark Rubio is no different than that. In fact, he is the one that is now being purported to be like the new president of Venezuela or Cuba. Mark Rubio, you could not win an election in the US. You sure as hell will not win an election outside of the US. But before we jump back in, I want to thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast today. Anybody who is joining us live, thank you guys so much for joining us whenever you can or whenever you're catching this show. Please show your support to our Delete This podcast. We are going to share with you guys a QR code that you guys can scan to be able to get access to our socials. We try to share updates on those socials regarding our show, but you can always catch us weekly here on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. All right, let us get back into the episode. So, shifting gears, I want to talk about Grok. I haven't really seen a lot of people cover Grok because I don't know why. I think it was like it's a little blimp in what is going on right now on the internet, but I think that it's definitely worth discussing because we are entering the age of disinformation or misinformation where the creation of AI generated images, voice, video is being allowed to just rampantly be used by the population with no restriction. Now, I'm a person that strongly believes in free speech, so do not get me wrong that I don't think that I'm not advocating for people to control what people think or say or do or act like. But what I think is very odd is AI generated images on behalf of somebody else. And that is what Grok has been involved with recently. If you're not familiar with Grok, it is a generative artificial intelligence chatbot that was developed by XAI. And XAI is part of the Elon Musk X conglomerate. And their AI software is what is powering X at this moment. So if you guys have not seen, Grok was released in 2024, but most recently there was a release that happened at some point at the end of December, because once you started going, if you saw like a photo of like somebody like a man or woman that was like attractive and you go into the comments, people were prompting Grok. They were like, at Grok, like remove their clothes. At Grok, put them in lingerie. At Grok, bend them over, have them do X, Y, and Z. All kinds of crazy things on somebody else's image. So this is like just a stranger prompting it to make your image into something. And there was like there's no hold bars, because I could just upload also like an image of somebody else that isn't even on the platform and generate those images, just to show you guys though like what that image that Grok image generation release note, we have that pulled up here. Basically it's just saying that we are updating Grok's capabilities with a new auto-regressive image generation mode, a code named Aurora, available on the X platform. we've enhanced Grok's image generation abilities with a new model codenamed Aurora, yada, yada, yada. So basically, this is just a press release to share it. And then this is kind of a sample of what Grok can do. If you guys have not tuned into like X, or you guys have seen like the threads with those images, this is like a sample of, I guess, a celebrity sample. It's Elon Musk, and they're being prompted here to Elon Musk wearing an XAI jacket with a US flag in the background. So it's giving a comparison. On the left-hand side, you could see this is the Grok AI's outputted version. And then on the right-hand side, these are like the competitors, like the best that they can do. So the Grok one is like very, very realistic. And it is shockingly realistic to a point that I hadn't even fathomed that people would actually do something like this. Like I said, I saw, okay, like if there's like an attractive man, woman, whatever people were prompting in the comments, something sexually explicit. Yeah, it was gross. Yeah, it was like, that's very weird. Why are they just doing that for the images? But okay, whatever. Like, this is shocking. This is weird. Okay, I'm just gonna like, stay away from this. I had not fathomed that people would attempt to use this on underage users. And this cannot be an oversight by the designers. This cannot be an oversight by Elon Musk, by X. There is no way that this was not flagged by any single person on the team. Okay, I'm entitled to not think that because like my mind just doesn't go there. But if you're designing a software and you're releasing that software and there's a question about like ethics of like, hey, like any image at all could be prompted to do anything at all, hey, that might be something that you want to flag. But this is a little excerpt that we pulled from a news article that talks about what is going on Grok with these underage users. It says, in one X post now removed from the platform, Grok edited a photo of two young girls into skimpy clothing and sexually suggestive poses. Another X user prompted Grok to issue an apology for the incident involving an AI image of two young girls estimated ages 12 to 16 in sexualized attire, calling it a failure in safeguards that it said may have violated XAI's policies and US law. While it's not clear whether the sexually explicit imagery of identifiable adults or children can be illegal under US law, in another back and forth with a user, Grok suggested that users report it to the FBI for CSAM, noting that it is urgently fixing the lapses in safeguard. So, yeah, it's pretty much just saying like, hey, if you see this, like just report it, and we'll see what we can do about this. But I want to point out that big tech has never really wanted to issue safeguards. In fact, they've been working to do quite the opposite. If you guys heard about Trump's big, beautiful bill, then you would know that initially in with the big, beautiful bill, there was a memo to allow for or to not allow state governments to be able to issue regulations on AI for a 10-year period, which basically would have essentially just allowed AI or allows AI to be able to just do whatever it wants without any permission. And this definitely runs the gambit of that gray. I mean, it's not even a gray area to most normal and sane people, but it just shows you what kind of a backward society that we live in, that something like that is even able to take place, and that no guards at all were even attempted to be issued either by the company, neither by the government, neither by anything really. It should have been a shutdown of the platform until they're able to stop, or at least that feature until they're able to stop underage images from being underage people from being in sexually explicit images. Yeah, it seems like a little bit of a no-brainer. And this is what Elon Musk's response was to, I guess, that news article coming out, or like overall X's response, which is, we're not kidding. Like, hey, if you make images, it's the same thing. It has the same consequence as if you like actually created the content for it. And yeah, Elon Musk, if you're not kidding, you own the platform, my dude. But honestly, I think my new nickname for Elon Musk is the dumbass bumass, and we're gonna get into why I gave him that nickname in a little bit. But just to talk a little bit about the age of misinformation and why we all should be concerned is not only because of the unlimited possibilities of AI and generative AI that is allowed to be administered to like regular population, but also that Grok AI has now opened up a deal with El Salvador. Yeah, that's President Nayib Bukele to be exact, for replacing the current education system. It says that in 2 years, Grok will deploy across 5,000 schools in El Salvador for a personalized education. So, just reading a little bit of an excerpt from that article, it says, as President Nayib Bukele said, El Salvador doesn't just wait for the future to happen, we build from it. From establishing a global standard in security to now pioneering AI driven education, El Salvador proves that nations can leapfrog directly to the top through bold policy and strategic vision. With XAI as the leader in frontier models and El Salvador as a test bed for innovation, this partnership is destined to deliver something rather extraordinary for all of humanity. As Elon said, by partnering with President Bukele to bring Grok to every student in El Salvador, we're putting the most advanced AI directly in the hands of our entire generation. El Salvador isn't waiting for the future of education, they're building it with XAI. Now, if you guys have used anything like a chat GPT, if anything similar to it, you know that it cannot parse a Excel spreadsheet for shit, okay? So I'm scared for the children of El Salvador. And the other thing, like I said, the age of misinformation, okay? I want us to remember the AI, OpenAI whistleblower, Suchir Pinchal, which, oh, I don't think his name is Suchir Pinchal, sorry, that's the CEO actually of Google, but I think his name was Suchir hopefully we can pull his last name, but I believe it was Suchir. Yeah, he was flagging that basically the way that generative AI works is that it utilizes a lot of copyrighted material, and at some point it is pretty much just a regurgitation of the information, with just attempting to kind of beef up, like for example, if you're generating a paragraph email, it's like it will take a sample email from somewhere that it's scraped on the internet and just beef it up and then keep beefing it up until it's just like additional words, and it's not necessarily the most efficient form of writing. And by the way, we got his name was Suchir Balaji. Yeah, I don't necessarily trust AI to be teaching children, but also I understand that a large part of the education system is pretty much just people in power telling us what we need to learn and what we need to memorize to be true. So I don't necessarily know if the AI is going to make things worse for our society as much as it already is, but I encourage anybody that has children in school to teach your kid to actually research things of their own interest, teach them to understand history, teach them to understand the news as things pass, and teach them to just be a regular human and civilian and person to other people, so that they are not psychopaths like that guy that we saw earlier in the video who was shouting that now is the time. And I could not follow. Well, I followed, but I did not want to follow him. But I want to share this like memo here, just to highlight that the US government has been attempting to remove the guardrails from AI and allowing, like I said, AI to just run rampant. The Peter Thiels that are running those companies, Sam Altman's, the JD Vance's, yeah, they have a vested interest in ensuring that there are no guardrails because that is where their investments lie. Okay. JD Vance, the hillbilly from like mid America who had his mother be a former drug addict, which also I want to parse that narrative a little bit further, that because I find it really interesting as we were talking about the CIA and Charles Manson. Like a lot of people who are kind of associated with like the not medical industry, but like people who are like highly medicalized, like drug addicts, people who are taken to therapy, like a lot of people are like that are associated with those groups are like adopted. Like JD Vance is adopted into his family. I forget. There's another politician that was like she's adopted in. Oh, I think Erica Kirk. I think she's adopted into her family. Like it's very odd. Like where do you babies come from? Where do these babies come from specifically? But if you don't believe me, JD Vance and his close ties with AI, with venture capital, that's where he pretty much got his start. After he graduated from law school, he worked directly in venture capital, and he then worked for another VC firm, opened up his own firm, and then was like mentored directly by Peter Thiel. But like I said, if you don't believe me, this is JD Vance urging you, do not put any guardrails on AI. Trust me, this is a good idea. Let's go ahead and watch JD Vance.
And I'm not here this morning to talk about AI safety, which was the title of the conference a couple of years ago. I'm here to talk about AI opportunity. When conferences like this convene to discuss a cutting-edge technology, oftentimes I think our response is to be too self-conscious, too risk-averse. But never have I encountered a breakthrough in tech that so clearly calls us to do precisely the opposite. Now, our administration, the Trump administration, believes that AI will have countless revolutionary applications in economic innovation, job creation, national security, healthcare, free expression, and beyond.
Do the opposite. He said, do not try to limit it. I find it laughable that they find that AI will be the future of our society when it, in fact, has been working as the exact opposite. It has been spreading misinformation. It has been allowing the population to make sexually explicit, defamatory content against one another. I think that AI wants us to pit each other against each other, so that we sell our likeness, we sell our image, we sell our soul basically to them. We give them everything that we own. We don't buy houses. We put all of our money inside of a bank and just use a digital wallet. We don't buy a car. Our cars are electric. Our cities become more and more electric, more susceptible to being able to be turned off. And JD Vance has long verbally claimed that he no longer has investments in VC. Like I said, he worked for Mithral Capital. That was with Peter Thiel, where he met him, where he met Peter Thiel, but somehow like got the job straight out of his law degree. He worked for Steve Case's Rise of Revolution, which is another VC. He opened up his own company, which I think was called Naria Capital. And then he said, yeah, I stopped after in 2023, I stopped having like investment in those. But yeah, we actually have the 2025 financial disclosures that are self-disclosed. And just to read a couple of line items from this, JD Vance, his overall worth in VC is estimated at $1.265 million. So you could see from this image, we have Nario Capital Fund. That's his VC firm. We have Rise of the Rest Seed Fund. That's the fund that he worked on with Steve Case, Rise of the Rest Seed. Nario Capital is listed again. And then we also have, I believe, another image. We have Nario Capital listed again. So you guys can see the income amount that's listed there, the value. Some of those are valued at like none or less than 201. Like, I mean, come on. You're telling me that JD Vance has invested $100,000 to $250,000 dollars. Could we actually pull up that first image? Rise of the Rest Seed Fund, like kind of that biggest chunk right there. It says JD Vance has invested $100,000 to $250,000 in a value, but the income amount is none or less than 201. Give me a fucking break. Do you think that you're just gonna have $100,000 to $250,000 sitting there without it generating any money for you? Absolutely not. So this is just what has been reported on the 2025 financial disclosures. So JD. Yeah, he's a silly guy. I will say that Usha Vance's financial disclosures were also available, and hers were actually super fine and normal. It was like just like a Roth IRA, like retirement funds. Of course, she obviously benefits from those funds from her husband, but Usha Vance to me has so far checked out as like a good and normal person. I think that she genuinely loves. I think that JD Vance and Usha Vance are genuinely in love, and they have like a happy family. Um, but I think that JD Vance is a chameleon, and I think that he is not somebody that should be trusted. And just to exemplify this age of misinformation a little bit further, I want to talk about Elon Musk himself, because Elon Musk is the guy, like that I said, that he's dumbass bum ass, because he is like the one that was purported all over media as being this super genius. And I haven't seen any evidence of his super geniusness. That apparently he read the Encyclopedia Britannica from page to page, but again, I haven't seen any example of that actually presenting itself. What I see is a boy that was born into a lot of wealth, that moved to the US to start a business, and then his dad gave him a handout of money to be able to start that business. But let's go ahead and take a look at what bum ass Elon Musk says about himself when he started his first business in California with Zip, to how he was allegedly so poor and broke.
Take us back to when you really started all of this.
Well, that was the summer of '95. I had no money whatsoever. I was working, doing research in Silicon Valley on a completely different subject and trying to start this company at the same time. And when it came time to decide, do I want to do graduate studies or do I want to start this company? And I decided to start the company. I had no money. As a graduate student, I would have received a scholarship and a stipend and so forth. In starting the company, I had nothing. I had no income source. So we found that an office was actually cheaper than an apartment in Silicon Valley. So we got this dinky little office that had a leaky roof. It was just the nastiest place you can imagine.
And you lived in it too?
And I lived in it too and showered at the YMCA. This lasted for about 3 or 4 months. And the reason we chose this office, in addition to it being really cheap, was that there was an internet service provider on the floor below. So we were able to get really cheap internet access by drilling a hole in the floor and connecting to their server directly.
I want to remind you that this was the age of like the Mark Zuckerberg, the Jeff Bezos. Like, you just are supposed to start your businesses in a garage, and it's not the US or CIA that is involved in those large businesses. It's actually just these entrepreneurs or people that came from nowhere. But Elon Musk is actually allegedly the son of a huge real estate investor and emerald trader in South Africa. We actually have an image of Elon Musk with his brothers as a kid, and this is their house. It's a gorgeous South African mansion. This is only probably part of it, but Elon Musk inherits a plethora of wealth. And if you do not believe me on it, let us take a listen at Elon Musk's father. And this is how he describes how the children experience their wealth at a young age.
They grew up with me from a very early age. As I spoke to you earlier about, they only knew that they lived in a very fine home in Waterkloof. By the time they were 7, 8, 9 years old, I had given up Mercedes-Benz cars. I had moved on to Rolls-Royce cars. So they only rode in Rolls-Royce cars, if you understand. They knew that if you wanted to go somewhere, you got into a twin-engined aeroplane that belonged to you, and you flew there. And then you landed on your airstrip, and you went to your lodge, if you understand. They weren't like other kids. And, they'd been to, as I said, they learned to ski in Europe when they were still 10 or under 10 years of age.
It's kind of eerie how similar he sounds like to Elon Musk. But yeah, that's his father. And he's saying, hey, yeah, my kids weren't normal kids. Okay, they flew on their own private plane into their own private what is that, like little driveway. And they went to private schools. They drove in like a Rolls Royce until we could upgrade them to a Bentley. Like these kids had every single thing handed to them at a young age. They were not like these like poor kids that made it in the US just because they were super genius. And this report of Elon Musk as a super genius, I want to read a little excerpt. This is from his biography that was actually written in favor of him. You could see it listed here, Elon Musk. But just a little quote from there that I'll read is, while Musk had excelled as a self-taught coder, his skills weren't nearly as polished as those of the new hires. They took one look at Zip2's code and began rewriting the vast majority of the software. Musk bristled at some of their changes, but the computer scientists needed just a fraction of the lines of code that Musk used to get their jobs done. They had a knack for dividing a software project into chunks that could be altered and refined, whereas Musk fell into the classic self-taught coder trap of writing that developers call hairballs, big monolithic hunks of code that could go berserk for mysterious reasons. Now, I am also a self-taught as a programmer, so I get it, Elon, okay? I'm not that great at it either, but I try my best to always learn. And Elon, it sounds like he was one of those people as well, maybe who try their best. But I actually heard that he actually was able to, that they gave him, I think there was a competitor that they gave him their software, and then Elon Musk just tweaked it to make it run for his company. But I don't know exactly the full story of that. I don't know if Elon Musk secretly paid for that software behind the scenes. But yeah, he's not this super genius, okay? Because if he was a super genius, then he would probably write lines of code better than I could. And I'm like pretty decently smart to at least be able to say that I'm self-taught, as I believe Elon Musk is probably pretty decently smart to be able to teach himself and put together something that he can actually sell as a company. So I'm not hating on him for that, but is he a super genius? I don't necessarily know, but I will leave you guys with this one last video because I want to highlight that we are entering into a hyper surveillance state with ICE, with the militarization of police forces, law enforcement. And if you don't believe what is going on right now with, or if you are not seeing what is going on with people like JD Vance who are fighting tooth and nail for these AI companies, for tech, for big tech to take over our lives, then you need to understand who are the people that are running the businesses that the US is currently paying the largest private contracts with. That is companies like Peter Thiel's companies that he backs up, and Alex Karp's company, which is the defense company that is called, I forget what that one is called, Palantir. We also have Anduril, who is the one that's in charge of the new missiles and equipment. But let's go ahead and watch this video. This is a video that was made by AI Rise, and these are the 5 horsemen of the techno apocalypse, I guess I'm going to call it.
Actually unilaterally change the world without having to constantly convince people and beg people and plead with people who are never going to agree with you through a technological means.
Our product is used on occasion to kill people. This is drone targeting, or what is this? Targeting of all kinds.
What we do is we record it so no one can see it. Citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on.
We're going to have like cameras on, all over the place, and it's going to make the cities way safer. And maybe it's worth it for society collectively.
If somebody's committed crime, a more humane form of containment of future crime, which is if you now get a free Optimus, and it's just going to follow you around and stop you from doing crime.
As they said, just shut up, be good, and take it. Whatever we throw your way. And that is the society that they want to create. They want to create a pre-criminal society where you're criminalized for just the thought of committing a crime. And I'm not saying that I'm running around here wanting to commit a crime, but we're entitled to our privacy. We are entitled to be independent and not have our lives completely being watched and turned into these hyper consumers. We are allowed to gather and unionize against these dark forces. All right. With that being said, I want to say that if you guys ever have a lead or any story that you want us to cover, please share with us at our tips box, therealkevinm.info@gmail.com. We are willing to take any and all stories that you guys are wanting to hear, because we're not shying away on this podcast to talk about anything at all. But I want to thank you guys again so much for supporting us. Like and subscribe to our video if you're catching us on YouTube. But we're going to throw up again our QR code that you guys are able to scan to be able to support us on our different social media platforms. Like I said, we have our shows on a weekly basis, and you can catch us on various different platforms such as Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. So tune in again this week to have us or to hear us talk about our next topic. So thank you guys so much, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.